I know for a fact, if I could sit them down, strap them to a chair, give them some truth serum and hear what they really thought, I don't think that they would be a fan of interracial marriage. Because it's all about, your identity coming from your ethnicity, and what you don't want to water that down. You don't want to lose that. You don't want to mix that, and so
that's Joel Webbon. He's a pastor, if you guys don't know, in the Austin, Texas area. He leads something called Right Response Ministries. It's a growing YouTube channel and larger influential ministry, part of a number of young guys, so there's a lot of synergy with this. Context of that clip, why'd you pull that clip out, Kdub? Let's help the audience see, because some people may be like, wait, what's this pastor talking about now?
Yeah, so the context of the conversation, I'm gonna give you 1,000-foot and then a smaller, close up. We were talking about Black Hebrew Israelites, so he brought me on the show to talk about really the doctrine, the racism of the Black Hebrew Israelites. In light of that, we shifted to talk about woke people, and so people who take identity, kind of their Black identity, right? And he was really going in on how he finds that troubling and problematic. And so that's the context of this clip right here.
And so this is when you were a guest on the show.
Correct.
How long ago was that?
This had to be over 2 years now, when that was on.
And he had you on to talk about Hebrew Israelism, right?
That's correct.
And in the context of that, he's saying these woke folks, they wouldn't be okay with interethnic marriage. That's what he's talking about Christians, right?
Yeah, he's saying if honing in on your identity is such a huge thing, then you would naturally have to lead to a problem with interracial marriages, right? Yeah.
And I think what you're trying to show here is partially, at least, the contrast between him saying that now and some of the guys he hangs out with who say things kind of different.
Yeah, that's correct. It's the different side of Joel. Whether and I'm being favorable, I'm trying to say I think he's changed his position on this, right? He wasn't always saying the stuff he's saying now, right? I think we're going to see that in some of the clips we play.
Now, although my understanding is officially, at least Joel and Right Response, they would say, hey, we're not anti-interethnic marriage, but it's some of his cohorts or some of his guys that he's with that he platforms and are part of the movement. That's my understanding.
They would say something to the effect, if I'm understanding them correctly, they're not anti-interracial marriage, but they definitely don't want to see it on a whole mass scale. Like, it's kind of keep it small, right? Keep it simple, right? Don't get too crazy with it, right? Like, we're cool with a little bit, but don't pour too much in the glass.
Now, who said that? Who said that though?
So, well, that's Stephen Wolf. That's really where it comes out of. He says, hey, actually, he's not anti-interracial marriage, but he also argues people have a collective duty to marry within their own kind.
Right. So Stephen Wolf is the author of The Case for Christian Nationalism. And the main place these discussions are heard as far as larger scale social media is on X or Twitter. You see a lot of it on there. And for a while I ignored it because I viewed it as just like basically it looks like the left is trying to slander any politically conservative Christians as Christian nationalists. But then some of this started bubbling to the surface and I was like, well, wait, in elements of this, there seem to be some actual theological problems. And this is something different. Marlon, have you been hearing much about this in your end? Because I know Kris is sort of at the center of the controversy. What's your exposure?
Yeah, I've been hearing a little bit of it. I'm not as active on Twitter as most are. So I miss a lot of the sort of quote unquote controversies that are going on. But yeah, I've heard little chirps here and there of sort of the application of Christian nationalism from a certain perspective. And so I sort of scratched my chin, like, what are they talking about? What do they mean by this? You know what I mean? Dive into it. And some of the stuff I've heard was definitely concerning, of how it seems like some kinism is creeping in a little bit. different elements of things like that. And so, yeah, that's sort of where I've sort of my take on it, if you will, or where I've sort of heard of it,
Let's play another clip from that same interview that you were part of, Kdub, where he talks about preserving blood and give some context.
So whether you ever say it, articulate it or not, the natural thought process is that skin, that blood needs to be preserved. And so you have to turn inward rather than outward and embracing people from every tribe, tongue, and nation. And, I've got 3 girls, and if one of them, brings some Hispanic guy home one day when she's older and the guy loves the Lord, then I want to say, praise God, marry my daughter, or black guy, praise God, marry my daughter. But I feel like if race is you can't say that. Biologically, some of these things, including dispensationalism, I'm certainly not going to put it in the same camp as Black Hebrew Israelites, but all those things that just emphasize so much race, ethnicity. I mean, when you practically think about it and the way it plays out, it doesn't go anywhere good. Because if you emphasize ethnicity, if you emphasize white skin, black skin, or Hebrew skin, and you think that there is a spiritual dynamic that is contingent on skin, then the natural, whether you ever say it, articulate it or not, the natural thought process is that skin, that blood needs to be preserved. We're upset with him. Kdub, Kris, he's African American.
Okay, so in that, sorry, wrong screen. He's saying that other people besides the Hebrew Israelites have similar problems. Is that what he's saying there?
I think he's talking about woke people who make this emphasis on Black identity, right? He's articulating, when your identity of your skin color, your race, your ethnicity, right, becomes the driving lens, a focus, then it inevitably leads to problems, right? And so, I actually agree with what he just said there. I don't know if he could say that now. Yeah,
because it seems like that's what they focus on a lot.
Absolutely, white boy summer, right? I mean, that's a constant theme of the matter of fact, a common phrase going all along in this movement is preserving of the white race. Right, we want to. Sometimes they'll say that. Sometimes they'll say things like, "We want to preserve American heritage." Right, you may hear some language like that, but when you actually get down to what they think is American, they come out with another phrase, which is WASP, white American, white Anglo-Saxon Protestantism. But sometimes the confusion is sometimes the confusion also is with the term white. Because sometimes they use it to refer to skin. Sometimes they use it to refer to ideology. Just to give an example of this, Wolf is kind of given his, he say, I'm going to tell you guys who my favorite white Anglo-Saxon Protestant is. He says Clarence Thomas, right? If you know who that is, you know the humor in that because he's a black man. But what he says? He is assimilated to whiteness, right? So whiteness becomes now an ideology. You remember when all the woke folks were saying whiteness, right? Whiteness is evil and all this stuff. It's like, well, I think obviously they went too far, but they were right that there were some people pushing this ideology of whiteness, right? It's an assimilation of an idea. White is an idea rather than just skin color.
And so in these old clips, he's comparing Hebrew Israelites to other groups who have ideology he finds objectionable upon gospel basis. We're going to play 2 more of these from that interview, because if you guys listen carefully, sometimes you can hear Kdub in the background going, But some of the new stuff, when you follow it, sounds awfully different. And by the way, this whole controversy happened between Kdub and some of these guys. And they kind of acted like they didn't know who Kdub was. Like they had barely heard of him.
Yeah, they did. I was cracking up when they did that, man.
And the song begins with that. There's like, I don't know. I think he's also a rapper. It's like, yo, he was on your show, man.
Right.
He introduced me as a rapper, which is kind of funny. I think it's funny, man. It is what it is.
And then he called you a African American rapper.
Right. That kind of drove me. I was like, what? I was like, really?
Wait,
come on, man.
Wait, hold on, man. You got to get my full title: the African American Christian rapper who's connected with John MacArthur.
Yeah,
I want that. I want that on my tombstone.
I didn't know he was
That's
even
hilarious,
connected with John MacArthur.
I have no affiliation with John MacArthur.
Yeah, I didn't think you did. I feel like that was just what they call poisoning the well.
Correct.
Because
I
like
thought that too. Yeah,
I've known Kdub for a long time. I don't know of any special connection to John MacArthur. What would be the closest you have to John MacArthur connection? I don't know.
I'm probably like 5 people down the line of some kind of connection. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know.
It might be a Kevin Bacon situation, but that's about it.
Yeah. Maybe
Or
somebody
maybe they thought you was a Dispy, man. Maybe they thought you was a Dispy, so you connected to John MacArthur, man.
I don't know.
Well, speaking of Dispies, wait, did I already play that one?
Biologically, when it just some of these things, including dispensationalism, I'm certainly not going to put it in the same camp as, Black Hebrew Israelites, but all those things that just emphasize so much race, ethnicity. I mean, when you practically think about it and the way it plays out, it doesn't go anywhere good. Like, because if you emphasize ethnicity, if you emphasize white skin, black skin, or Hebrew skin, and you think that there are spiritual, there is a spiritual dynamic that is contingent on skin, then the natural, whether you ever say it, articulate it or not, the natural thought process is that skin, that blood needs to be preserved.
We're upset with him. Kdub, Kris.
Home, you probably are teaching your kids, no, hey, we don't bring people home.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just,
I hear you.
Racism. My point is, if race is a big deal, racism is the necessary wall of defense to preserve the big deal of race. You can't continue to emphasize race multiple generations from now without dividing walls of hostility to protect the purity of the race. And I feel like even with Israel, ethnic Israel, I mean, again, if ethnic Israel is coming into salvation, or even apart from salvation, if they just are coming into the first world, which they are, and they're traveling and intermarriage and all those kind of things, then at a certain point, it's like, who is Israel? So whether you ever say it, articulate it or not, the natural thought process is that skin.
Okay. So in that one, he seems to know what racism is there, right?
Yeah, he uses it without any qualification. He didn't read a 20-minute dissertation, right, to use the term. Right? He uses it without qualification in the same way that I was using it, right? Which is very interesting because now when you say the word racism, a lot of these guys, and I've experienced this, you'll start to experience this. You say words like racism, white nationalism, kinism, really to show the partiality of some of them, they tune out. They don't listen, right? They refuse to listen. I think we've already seen that even in the chat. We haven't even used the word. I've intentionally not used the word, and still people will insert it for you. You're saying racism, right? And therefore, I'm not listening because the left has so abused that word, right? Where racism is under every rock, under every tree, under every fingernail. Therefore, racism doesn't exist. That's what a lot of these people have kind of articulated, right? So you have, I think you made this point, Vocab, where Robin DiAngelo, Ibram X. Kendi, racism is everywhere. But for a lot of these Christian nationalists, racism is nowhere, right? You see the problem? Both of these are extreme positions.
So Marlon, you see what's going on here. Have you talked to any of these guys personally or online yourself, Marlon?
No, I haven't, man. I have not talked to any of these guys personally. But just to sort of peel off of what Kris said, I mean, it's almost like he said, it's almost like this abusing of the term racism. So now, whenever we really have a case of racism, now it sort of gets thrown to the wayside, and think people are just using it just as almost like this idea of crying wolf, as if you're just using that term. It's almost like this element within this conversation that there cannot be any real racism, right? It's like when you have liberal black folks who say black folks can't be racist. Like it's
Right.
almost like that. Like it's just not taking the accusation of racism seriously when it needs to be taken seriously. And unfortunately, like Kris said, the word has been abused so much that when is it real and when should we take it serious? Right? When should we take it serious? So if I'm looking to listen to Joel and I listen to these guys, listen to Stephen Wolf, guys like that, and I hear something that is really concerning, something that should be handled with care and concern, now it's not because it's sort of the word has been abused so much. So it's definitely it's tough, man.
And let me even say something further. They almost take this term as a badge of honor. Like when someone calls them racist, like Joel Webbon has actually said, he's kind of taking this name as a badge. He's like, I'm going to racist even harder now. He's like, hey, you going to call me a racist? I'm going to racism even harder. It's like such a weird thing. Like someone call you an serial adulterer. I'm going to adultery even harder now. Like, well, it's just a weird like badge of honor you want to take on, but
yeah.
Well, let's take a look at a couple of these tweets here. So, Kris, we're gonna show one by a neo-Orthodox disrespecter at 1689er, and a conversation between him and Yehoshua X27. Do you know that guy? Which guy is that? I forgot. He's neo-Orthodox disrespecter. He's one of their guys, right?
I'd have to see the
all right, here I'll show
kind
you.
of profile. That's kind of how I know people.
Just give me a second here. I'll switch.
The point is, all these guys claim to be of Christian nationalism.
Yep.
And one of the sure ways you can know a Christian nationalist as well, kind of like the surefire way. Obviously, not all, but they definitely they're going to have like the red pick and the blue eyes. Generally by a Confederate person, right? They love Dabney. They love some kind of like Franco. They love people who've kind of exhibited, especially some kind of violence, Inquisition, the Crusades. They love that, right? It sounds funny, but this is genuinely, the heroes of Christian nationalism are people who kind of displayed this violence and taken over for the conquest.
They talk about people's exploits in war, and they're all excited about it.
It's just so weird,
And the one I saw, even James White put red pick, blue eyes, no gospel.
Yeah. I said that in the song, right? Red pick, Confederate, blue eyes. Right?
If you guys notice, we're gonna play this Chris's song, by the way, again at the end. Okay, so here's neo-Orthodox disrespecter. He says, racism is a word invented in the 20th century by communists. Joshua says all words are invented, but it depends on what we mean. I'm fine with the definition of racism as, quote, the belief that different races possess distinct characteristics, abilities, or qualities, especially so as to distinguish them as inferior or superior to one another. And then neo-Orthodox disrespecter. So he's one of these guys. Invented, as in has no use, not even just the word, but the concept in the Bible or church history prior to 1940. Let me move this around here. It is clear as day that certain races have superior traits to others. Individuals are equal in value, but there are clear differences in capacities across all races.
And that's what killed me, man, because James White pointed this out too, and he was reading some of the tweets in his when he did a stream on Divided Line concerning some of these guys and their like racist tropes, man, and their dismissiveness of what clear racism is. And notice his tag, 1689er. I think he's talking about the London Baptist Confession. Baptist
it's in
Confession.
Almost all these guys' profiles, right, Kris?
Yeah, it's very huge from the 1689ers.
Yeah, and these guys are wild. And they have no shame. Clearly, this guy, neo-Orthodox disrespecter, he has no problem with talking about this stuff in fashion that he's talking about it. It's interesting.
Yeah, this guy's on the show a lot. I forgot his name. Kdub, do you remember which guy this is?
Man, I forget his name as well. I'm sorry, I don't have his name near me.
Yeah,
but
he's on there.
I don't know. So growing up, Vocab, you kind of heard a lot of you know, racial epitaphs and kind of like origin stories. I remember growing up kind of hearing like, you know, why black people are more athletic, you know, it's because they had more, you know, more muscles. Yeah, I don't know if y'all heard that growing up, and it's kind of like,
I heard that stuff.
Fast twitch muscles.
Yeah. And so, Rick said this is Joel Webbon's research guy, and so I would argue different ethnicities have different capacities, but I wouldn't argue they have better or superior traits, right? This kind of reminds me of like some kind of eugenics kind of stuff. And so it's just the language they use to even express some of this is troubling and problematic, right? Like, what do you mean by superior traits? Like intellect? Like, what do you mean? You know what I mean? So it actually requires more fleshing out, but it's still problematic on its face.
No doubt. Shout out to the live chat real quick. We got Carm, Nate2D2, Apostate of Allah holding it down on the live chat. Shout out to every single person who's holding it down. Warrior Woman holding it down as well. Of course, I see Caldwell. How you doing, Rick? I can't wait to do our show this coming up Friday. So thank you all for being here, and of course, Dr. Bob as well. What's his name? Rick, the research guy. See, this is kind of tricky, guys. This has been bubbling under the surface a while, but a lot of this is like popping up real fast at the same time and growing in popularity, and so it's hard to keep track of all these new guys. He's like a new cast of characters.
And let me say something to this Vocab that I think will be helpful, because one thing you do see is I think the mainstream guys are a lot more careful and aren't just coming out saying like stuff like black people go back to Africa. But what you do see is a lot of their followers are radicalized.
Yep.
And
their
followers they're more radicalized, and they want the leaders to be more radicalized just like them. And so I think there's going to be either a breaking point or a radicalization more so from the leaders if this stuff isn't actually dealt with. You know what I mean?
So that's what we're trying to do. So here's Michael Spangler. Why do they keep insisting that belief in racial superiority and inferiority mean we've denied salvation to inferior races?
Like what? Like, who says that, man? Come on, man.
Michael Spangler says
it. Man.
So
Michael Spangler says it.
So here's the thing. What we're showing is if you're confused, this is your like introduction to this topic. There's these guys that go under these different labels, such as the dissident right, Christendom 2.0, Christian nationalist, and a lot of them come from the Presbyterian spectrum. But a lot of them now are coming from the Reformed Baptist perspective as well. Not all. Some, like Stephen Wolf, come from the natural theology perspective. And so our point about this isn't, Nick and his Catholic groypers. It's not those guys. This isn't the post-Christian right. These guys are supposed to be Christians. And so that's the point of what we're bringing out here. Now look at the second part of this tweet. 19th century Southern Christians believed in white superiority and were more zealous and successful in evangelizing blacks than any anti-racist today.
Gosh, this guy, man.
Marlon, didn't you know that those slavers, they was bringing the gospel to them slaves at a clip we've never seen before?
Man.
He's literally saying,
wild, bro.
Notice when he says
he's literally saying that. Yeah.
Like this fool, he's like including like black folks, the slavers, the white racist slavers were. He's saying that white supremacists,
with no shame,
they were better at bringing the gospel.
Bro. With no shame. Look how many likes that thing got. 107 likes. With no shame. With no shame, guys.
Yeah.
Check this out. Let's continue.
He's like saying, just because I believe I'm better, you don't mean you can't be saved. It's like,
right.
He's like, hey, this is like a moderate Hebrew Israelite.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
That's what
y'all gotta come under the white man, kind of.
Yeah, he's a moderate Hebrew Israelite, but on the other side,
like even the next phrase, in charity.
In
like,
charity,
what?
here, let me talk how some of them talk. In charity, we ought to expect this. Christians who humbly recognize their own superiority thereby recognize their special duty to seek the good of their inferiors. This is basic obedience to the fifth commandment.
Hey, we got to get into that. We got to get into that because
Have you ever seen a more twisted use of fifth commandment in your life? Basically, short version, everybody, these dudes use the fifth commandment to justify white supremacy. Go ahead, though, Kris.
yeah. Let's talk about that because people may be confused. How does honor your mother and father mean you're superior than other ethnic groups? Well, what they teach honor your mother and father mean, when you ever hear them talking about the fifth commandment, they're not just talking about, my mom named Patricia, right? They're not just talking about your mom and your dad immediate. They're talking about your kin, the white family. So how do you honor the white family? Well, one way is you marry a white woman, right? You wouldn't want to dishonor your family, right? You preserve the white race. And so that's what they mean by the fifth commandment. It's not just obeying your mother and father, your immediate household, but it's a lot larger and grander. When you hear them talk about the fifth commandment, you just need to keep that in mind, right?
Wow.
And fill us in on who Michael Spangler is, because I'm trying to keep track of all the cast of these characters.
Some of these guys I don't really know well. I just kind of look at who follows who, and they're all following each other, right? I think he's a Presbyterian minister. Because I looked him up on YouTube, and he has sermons.
And that's what's crazy about this. Notice what Kris just said.
He's a pastor somewhere.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is crazy about this. Like a lot of the, if we're going to call it, I hate these terms, annoy me, but whatever. A lot of the woke left, they're like in mainstream Christian churches. A lot of them, not all of them. If they were, and then you see other people like that would spout this kind of stuff that have not historically been involved with, like, at least in the current times, I guess. This is hard to explain. Conservative, gospel preaching, legitimate evangelical churches. The difference with a lot of these guys is they're in churches.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
These guys are in churches. I mean, what are we going to do about that, Kris? Because it's going to cost them splits, to say the least.
Yeah. Like you said, it's not just in churches, but leading churches, pastoring, shepherding churches, whole flock members are under their, leadership. And yeah, you're right. That is a problem. And I think it only is going to lead to some kind of split. I can't see how it doesn't, happen.
Yeah, in a second here, I'm going to play part of a sermon by Joel Webbon. You guys are going to love it. You guys are absolutely love it. Okay, so here's Critical Base Theory. He tweeted Stephen Wolf's argument for segregation and against interracial marriage. This is from the book The Case for Christian Nationalism. And here's what Wolf says. If they don't separate and they married each other, the nation's people's ethnics would cease to exist. It would turn into a mass monoculture. But we are drawn to similarity, as Aquinas said. That's like, remember I said Stephen Wolf's a natural law guy, right. Which is therefore part of our nature, and so part of our good. Imagine saying, well, it's part of our nature, so therefore it's part of our good. And thus while intermarriage is not itself wrong as an individual matter, groups have a collective duty to be separate and marry among themselves. Now, if he was talking about Christians and, said all Christians should marry other Christians, but he's not. He's talking about white people marrying white people.
Exactly.
Crazy.
And so he's kind of recanted this whole relatively sinful, but it's kind of weird because he's recanting it, but then he goes on and argues for it as well. And they like Aquinas in this matter. Now, I think they're taking Aquinas out of context, but they're talking about Aquinas saying grace doesn't take away nature. And now, we're all Calvinists, and we'd be like, yeah, depending on what you mean, of course I agree with that. But what they're talking about is grace doesn't take away nature, the natural kinship for your own people. and your duty to your own people. That's what they're talking about. Because Stephen Wolfe posted a picture of a white family, but he uses that quote from Aquinas to talk about grace doesn't take away nature. It's so weird, man.
These
This
guys
is so
have like
weird.
idolized the white
Wow.
nuclear family or something.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And-
We went from. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, bro. We what?
I was like, we went from trying to destroy the nuclear flame right there. Just like we're gonna just restore only the white nuclear family. You know.
Right. It's so overt, man. It's so brazen. If I could use that, I mean, it's so brazen how Stephen Wolfe is just putting it out there. I know this is back in 2022, a couple years ago, but man, just stunning.
You know, Marlon, what they'd say. Here's the kind of things they say about us. Oh man, those guys, they're not based.
Yeah, that's right.
Those guys
That's
are
right.
those guys are
Yeah.
sissies. Those guys are
Right.
guys are effeminate and female adjacent. They're woman adjacent.
Yeah, that's right. That's the common rhetoric you see on Twitter, right? They'll call you gay,
Yeah.
effeminate. Some will just straight out call you homosexual.
Or
Right?
in
If you're
your
not
case,
really
they might
rocking
call
with-
you the N-word.
Yeah, that's right.
And they did. I mean, if you remember, Kris, I saw that Twitter post that you posted. You took a clip of it, and somebody called you the N-word. And didn't Joel tell that guy to take it down or something like that? And then I think it was something about Joel was like, "Oh, you guys asked for too much. You know, you want me to ask him to repent and all this stuff, or something like that." I was like, "Dang,
He's like,
man, crazy."
you want him to lose his job, get fired. I think that was kind of like what he said. It's like, I'm not calling for that. I mean, I just want you to tell this guy that you follow to not use the N-word to me, you know? I mean, I don't think that's asking too much.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
what did he say? That's not the way forward, or that's not the proper way. Take it down. It
That-
was like
yeah,
it was almost like
that-
pragmatic.
Yes, that's not the way. It's like, so just don't say it in public. I mean, that's kind of like what
Right.
I like.
Yeah,
If
it's
the
like-
guy says it in back closet, it's okay, but don't say it in public.
Is
Like,
it sinful? And what didn't one of them respond? Which guy was it that responded and say, "Well, they use the N-word in rap music all the time."
yeah.
Gosh,
This
man.
fool said, "I looked up the statistics." I'm like, you don't need to look up stats to know they use the N-word in hip hop. First of all, hey, but all seriousness, with that situation of them calling you that, you know, kudos to you for not losing it, but just using it as a chance to exploit the wickedness in this camp. But
Absolutely.
they should be able to, on a practical level, actually understand, because they're like, well, they use this, so why can't we? These guys are like,
You
you
would
know,
never-
big American patriots and all that, and I'm patriotic too. You know, I'm with, like, these guys are making us look like we're not liberals. Like, you know,
Yeah,
but check it out.
exactly.
Yankee was a slur. You know, to call someone a Yankee. I got the Yankee hat on today. That was like a slur by the Brits against the Americans. You guys know that? You know? And it's a whole long thing that had originally do with the island of New York, or that, you know, that part of New York, and how the Dutch were there, and Jan Keys as a common name, and then it became Yankees for all Americans, and it became a slur, kind of basically a way to say a backwards, dumb farmer who's not cultured or educated and doesn't really know much. You know, that was kind of what it meant, like somebody who's simply enjoying life and doesn't really know what's going on. And so they would make these songs and make fun of the Americans, calling them Yankees. And it's basically like, you know, you idiots, you're not really one of us. We're British. You're not, you know, and you're not really. But the colonists tended to see themselves as British, right? So what happens is the Americans make a thing of it. Yankee Doodle went to town, right? Like they that was part of their, oh yeah, we're Yankees then. And now it's like Yank, when you go over to London, when you go over to England, they call you, oh yeah, he's a Yank. They're saying he's an American. My point is, we took something that was used for derision as Americans and turned it to like a term of endearment, basically. Regardless of your feelings about it, I'm just saying they should be able to better understand the use of the N-word in certain contexts in hip hop. That's my little argument from Yankee.
Absolutely.
Because it has a different
Absolutely.
meaning, and I think they know that. But, you know, it's like, why not just call it sin instead of looking up stats about rap albums and call the dude to repentance, goofy? Well, look
Right.
at this
It's so
quote.
silly, man.
There's
Super
a
silly.
difference between something being sinful absolutely and something being sinful relatively. Where's he even getting that from, by the way? Interethnic marriage can be sinful relatively, but not absolutely.
Yeah, so he went on the Cross Politic program. If you listen to the video with him on this, or around the 35-minute mark, and he kind of recants this, but it's weird because his explanation doesn't actually help better understand. Because he was like, I was trying to think how nations can preserve their culture. It's like, so why'd you call it relatively sinful again? I don't get his explanation how it actually helps, but to be fair, he says he recants this. Okay, so like I'll say he recanted, but he still believes this the other tweet about duty groups have a collective duty to separate and marry among themselves, and so I mean, what do you do with that? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Real quick, ladies and gentlemen, I want to make sure I give a shout out, massive shout out to my man Walsh. Why do I say a shout out to Walsh? Walsh provides this channel with a YouTube premium access, and that makes a big deal because commercials are eliminated and we can go straight to the source of stuff. So Jesse Walsh.
Can I be heard? Hello?
Oh, sorry. I'll come back to you. So shout out to Jesse Walsh for that. I appreciate that very much for you doing that, Jesse. And also shout out to Yondell, my man Alan Torres with the massive super chat, supporting the work. Thank you very much for what you do and what you bring. And then I also want to give a shout out to Crimson Hawk, who also just dropped a super chat on us. And let me drop his comment, actually, if I can, on the screen here. And then, guys, I'm bringing you back up. Shout out to everyone who is commenting. I know that people aren't going to agree with this. I don't know if our channel is, big enough or important enough to get their attention. That's fine either way, because we're just trying to make you aware of it and hopefully get some better conversation. Crimson Hulk says, appreciate that this is being talked about more, as this is a phenomena that has been on for some time, that it's been ignored for so long is why it's getting bolder and louder. And, I think you're right. I think you make a good point on that, Crimson Hulk. And again, thank you for the super chat. You guys support the channel. But let me just say something. I wasn't really aware of this at that level until I heard James White talking about it. And then I heard Kris being involved with it. So I said, let me catch up on this. And then I realized Kris and Caldwell and a lot of these brothers have been doing great for a long time on that. Okay, let me switch back over. Hopefully everybody else could hear me. I know Kris couldn't hear me for a second there. Not sure why that was. What about now? Kris, can you hear me now, brother? What about now, Kris? Can you hear me? Kris, I think you got your audio on in the back. Marlon, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, it's just Kris. Kris, you
I can hear you.
got to turn down that audio. We'll have to see what it is with Kris, because we can hear him. He don't even look like he don't know what's going on. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play Chris's song again. He can't hear? Kris, I'm going to play your song again and give you a chance to reset that. Let's try to figure out what's going on there. And let's play Chris's song. And then after the song, we're going to look at a sermon by Joel Webbon. We're actually going to look at a sermon. Well, there he goes. Shoot, actually, let me do this. Since Kris is off for a second, let me play a clip here. Marlon, you and I will check it out, and I believe he'll be back. This is a clip, not from a sermon, because the sermon one's going to take a little bit longer. And I am going to play Chris's song again, but just give us a second on that.
We're good.
This is one. Now, this is from some lefty channel. They put all this text over there. I didn't put the text over it, but I want to show something where they talk about basically his political theory here, his political theory, because there's some trouble elements to that as well. So here we go with that.
If you agree, disagree. But I think for our population that is degraded morally and culturally, and religiously, as far as we have, you need power. Men must be governed. you need a Caesar type, Now, if you're asking me my preference, that would probably be my preference, would be a constitutional republic. But I think the conditions for that is a moral people. So I think you can work towards that in the future. But I don't think constitutioning even harder is going to get us out of our current mess. I don't see us getting out of this apart from things getting worse and worse, and then eventually like a Caesar type rising through the ranks, a populist figure, and the people
the political will of the people. The people are desperate, and they're like, yes, do it, so and so, and then so and so, Constitution be damned, just rules with an iron fist, and like a Cromwell type, and then you hopefully don't get his son. Maybe then you're able, and then you maybe it's just a one generation, one guy kind of thing, and then you have to move back to aristocracy or some other form.
Okay, so historically, conservatives, as they've been called in America, have said, hey, we want, for example, Supreme Court justices who are strict interpreters of it. They're trying to actually read what it says there. They're not trying to put their own ideas. They're trying to be faithful to the text. And that's something that usually we've wanted Supreme Court justices who have that as their legal theory as they rule, not those who say the Constitution is a living, breathing document. By that, they mean it's basically malleable and worthless, and the original intent doesn't really matter. That's why they find rights like abortion where they don't exist. And they are simply activists. But notice there, Joel Webbon, as far as his political theory, we need a Christian Caesar who says Constitution be damned, forces everyone to do externally Christian things, and then hopefully we don't get a bad son and we can reset back the next generation.
It doesn't actually solve the problem, And he's like, well, while y'all are volunteering, I guess I'll be, I'm just playing, but it's like he want to be the Christian Prince so bad, It's it's like, haven't we been here though before?
It sounds like a Roman Catholicism.
But even from reform circles, right? I mean, we've been down this road before and saw how it worked.
Yeah,
see, that's actually why
magisterial reformers, where you had the Paedo Baptists in charge, and they did things like drown Reformed Baptists.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. He's like, well, that won't happen in this one, right? See, but that's why they call it 2.0, right? We got iPads now, right? So none of this stuff will actually happen that you got concerns about. They promised to be nice. Presbyterians will be nice. They said they crossed their fingers. Don't worry, Vocab. Nothing will happen. It's you just that's just the Baptist in you, man. You're just always fearful.
Imagine longing for a Christian dictator.
Oh, crazy. Man.
Crazy.
So a lot of these clips end up on liberal watchdog sites that say they're watching the right wing, like Right Wing Watch. He's perfect fodder for them, but he loves it when he gets on there.
Yeah. They always like base. They view it as like
badge of honor.
Yeah, badge of honor to be on these leftist shows exposing their ideology.
Shout out to Tim Moore for his comment. He says these guys want Holy Roman Empire back. Basically, except they want Holy Protestant Empire.
Right. That's what they want. That's what it is, man. Crazy. Crazy stuff.
Rick has a good quote from Joel Webbon. In Christendom 2.0, we will remove the bugs. So all the worries you have, Vocab and Marlon, don't worry. All the guys in the past, they had the test feature, but we have the Apple iDate, right? We have the updated version that you won't have any issues with. You know what I mean?
Hey, yo, Rick, I think they're going to need your help. You're a programmer, right? You need to jump in there, bro, and get those bugs out of Christendom 2.0. Because last time it resulted in a lot of people getting stretched out and drowned. So he said like Cromwell, and Cromwell was basically like that. So he specifically, it's funny, Cromwell sometimes still makes appearances in pop culture, even albeit on a smaller scale. Real brief story. Sometimes I still buy comics every now and then for leisure reading when too much theology and stuff melts my brain. And so sometimes I read the Destro comic. It's a mini series out right now, right? And Destro is a weapon supplier in the G.I. Joe universe who's been supplying weapons for European and global wars from a long line of a clan way back to medieval Europe. And in the most recent issue, Destro's forefather gets put on the Iron Mask as a punishment for selling weapons to both sides and it's unclear in the comic exactly who it is. It's either Oliver Cromwell or one of Cromwell's leaders, like one of his cronies. But he's literally in a current. I was like, yo, that's Oliver Cromwell. Like, what's going on? It's crazy, man.
Right.
But so there's the political theory. Now, we could have done this in the beginning, but after we've talked about this, I'm going to play a couple brief clips where he kind of defines Christian nationalism. Because if you're like, I still don't fully understand what this is, here's where he gives two. Now, there's a lot more. We could do multiple shows on this, and so could they. But here's where he briefly defines it in two different short clips about what Christian nationalism is from their perspective.
Mill guys, but then there's these classic two kingdom, all mill guys, and then there's Baptist, and then there's Paedos, Presbyterian, Paedo Baptist, and so but what would they share in common? What's the lowest common denominator? And I came up with three ideas. So one would be a belief that we are called to work towards distinctly explicit Christian nations, and that it could happen. So within the realm of eschatology, whether
Simply saying that providentially in
mill guys, but then there's these classic two.
Hey, Vocab, I can't hear you.
Sorry about that. He's
there
saying
you
it's
go.
a large
You come back.
coalition of different types of people. And that's interesting because it used to be basically, primarily you would have Presbyterians who were post-mill. But now you have guys like Apologia and them who are Reformed Baptists and yet post-mill, but haven't adopted all the elements of Presbyterianism. And so he's talking about a broad coalition. So it's not exactly theonomy. Now that relates to post-mill, but doesn't have to go together. You can be post-mill without being a theonomist. And these days you can be a theonomist without being post-mill, or you can be either one of those without being Presbyterian, apparently. Now I think it's all inconsistent because it shows problems with your understanding of the covenant. But let me show one other times where he defines it briefly in case that one wasn't clear.
Of a somewhat normal life like I did, and so I think that's one of them. Is it's the one common denominator is not that you must be post-mill or all mill or pre-mill. I think you could be in any of those three positions, but you're believing that that Jesus could tarry, that Christians should be involved in the political affairs of a nation, working towards the politics being Christianized, and that you could be successful in that it's actually worth the effort.
Would you add anything to those definitions, Kris, with people trying to understand what Christian nationalism is?
Well, the problem with Christian nationalism, as I see it, is there are 100 Christian nationalists, but there are 110 definitions of Christian nationalism. The problem is it's. But let's go with his, since we're critiquing Webbon's. In the first clip, it's kind of weird because he uses the term Christian nationalism in the definition of, he's like, they working towards a Christian nation. It's like, well, okay. So it's as long as you're for the goal of working towards some, and let's be honest, some general vague Christian nation, because that's the problem. Because in their ideology, Christian doesn't actually mean a regenerate person, a convert. Because remember, he's a kind of adopting, in some sense, a Presbyterian view of Christian, right? So you can have your kids be Christian even though they have not converted yet. Again, I know some Presbyterians might push back on that, but that is a large consensus of Presbyterians who adopt that. So they working towards Christian nation, and they not just working towards it, but you believe it could happen. Like so you got to be positive about the outcome of Christian nationalism actually taking place, and Jesus could tarry. So pretty much we got time to actually do this. So that's why I think this is largely post-mill. Now, again, I know some people who aren't post-mill who are into these circles, but kind of the idea of Jesus return being imminent, it could come at any moment. You got to get that out of Christian nationalism, right? Because we have to build towards a future here on the earth.
They like to quote Doug Wilson on that, Kdub, where he said, we're still in the early church.
Right. Yeah. It could be 2 million years till Christ's return, So, and then lastly, Christian nationalism is political, right? You must be working in the sphere of your local government. Christians should be doing, and I'm not saying they should. I'm just providing the definition that Christians should be working in those areas to bring about social change, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, notice how many times in these clips he talks about power.
Yeah.
It's a common
Yeah.
theme. Okay,
Matter of
so
fact,
here we
there's a
go.
clip.
Say what? Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, there's a clip of him talking about, Christians need to rise in power, right? And he's kind of rejoicing in the fact that he wants to crush his enemies. Right?
Yeah, I saw that.
And yeah, Joel's talking. He's like, yes, I want to crush my enemies. Right? He's kind of gleeful about it.
Yeah.
Hey,
Marlon, we do have a
Yo.
supporter of these guys in the live chat. I want to get your reactions because I think you've dealt with this the least, but you've dealt with this some. So I'll be curious to see your immediate reaction. Let me throw some comments on here by one of their supporters. Roll them bones. All right, you ready? And Kdub, of course. Okay, make it quick reactions because we got more clips. I just want to briefly see what you guys say to these. Bro,
All right.
y'all need to chill, Try and Joel to these dudes. Oh, wait, hold on. Sorry, my bad. Bro, y'all need to chill tying Joel to these dudes like he supports their radical views. Kdub?
I mean, we're playing Joel and his radical views. Like, what do you mean?
Right.
Not only,
We're
I think he's talking about the Twitter things earlier.
Oh, okay.
But hey, one of those guys was his research guy.
But Stephen, so like the Stephen Wolf quote, Stephen Wolf is actually going to be at their conference this coming up year. So we're not just arbitrarily adding Joel to Stephen Wolf and Stephen Wolf, that group or those individuals who hold these views. He's putting himself in that category. So it's like, we're not just adding him in there. Flippantly.
And if I'm connected to J-Mac, he's definitely connected to these guys.
Yeah, that's less of a connection. And you know what? In those old clips, he's banging on people who teach their kids against interethnic marriage. But now they had a call-in show I saw recently. Someone calls in and asked about interethnic marriage. It took these guys forever to answer. And it was all qualified. And I'm like, yeah, you ain't with it, bro. We already know. Listen to this. Hey, Marlon. So you're saying as a black man, you aren't more attracted to black women?
Well, I'm married to a Filipino woman, so I'm attracted to Filipinos as well. So it's like, dude, come on, man! Like it's crazy. It's crazy stuff. Crazy stuff.
I saw that comment too. I laughed at it too, knowing my situation. But
Kris, they were going after your wife on X, weren't they too?
Yeah, they're like, "Why are you always mentioning your white wife?" Funny enough, I said nothing about my wife's ethnicity in the song. Why y'all bringing up my wife's ethnicity?
Yeah. Hey, Kris, why are you guys afraid of God's law being legislated? Why are you afraid, Marlon?
No, it's not that we're afraid. We just know man is going to apply it wrong. Man. This is the thing. This is the thing that I think that this whole thing is missing here, is that they're not understanding the sinfulness of man's heart. They really believe that man is going to apply this correctly. I doubt that. I sincerely doubt that. They missing the element of the sinfulness of man's heart, the sinfulness of control. That's why he kept saying power, power, power. Bro, chill out. I mean, the application of God's law wouldn't even be applied right if it's left up to man. Put it that way.
He says, "Yeah, let's just let the pagans make the laws." Now, this is a false dichotomy because
I'm going to bring that up.
We don't have to be theonomists. We can have a different understanding of political theory as far as how the scriptures would apply to it. And, despite the issues, and I could tell you firsthand about some of the issues, but, the J.D. Hall versus Joe McDermott, and both of them have changed and all kinds of things since that debate. But that debate on theonomy at Apologia that I hosted, J.D. Hall actually made great points, just like he did for the most part in his book, Embers of a Dying Fire, or Fires of a Dying, whatever it was, about theonomy, and said, look, we can have other views on this issue. So we do. And, at the end of the day, I think all of us would say we want significant Christian influence on government. And we would, a lot of us, I think, be, what people call, now gets into a whole thing about general equity and all that stuff, but we would want the principles to be drawn from Scripture. It's just when the way you guys theonomy, what you're talking about, we see a blending of the covenants and smashing Old Testament Israel together with the church in a way that we don't think is right. I think it's theologically incorrect. So it's not just saying let the pagans make the laws, but you know what? Whoever makes the laws, The idea is obey Christ and serve faithfully in that situation. That's why Paul says in Timothy, pray for the kings. Go ahead, Kdub.
Yeah, I see a lot of conflation of kind of turning America into this kind of new Israel. Hence why we need to establish some kind of king. But if you actually listen to what we're saying, much of our critique is not really on post-millennial theonomy. It's about the racism and the kinism going on, the bigotry as the show of the title. Problem. You know, like look, we can debate post-millennial theonomy. That's a smaller problem, I think, right now on the rise. You know what I mean?
Notice the show, Christian Nationalism and Bigotry. Christians have discussed, especially amongst Reform folks, especially in the 20th and now 21st centuries, ideas relating to theonomy, ideas relating to postmillennialism, especially since Rushdoony and Bonson and those guys came out and had a lot of influence. And we can discuss that and figure that out and work through those things. We're not saying that's heresy. We're not saying that. We're pointing out the way that what they don't like to call racism, that's why we're calling it bigotry, has crept into a lot of this, and some of it's being made more and more explicit. And you even seem to agree. Roll Them Bone says, look, the racist stuff is trash, but y'all are going off the rails. How about they're going off the rails?
Yeah, how about them? Come on, man.
And we never said, let's just sit back and do nothing. See, this is the false dichotomy I get so tired of. You know, most of the Christian activism that's happened as far as in the political realm and different things like that hasn't been a bunch of people from your guys' camp, because your camp in its current incarnation is a new thing. But even if you go back and trace, it's not just going to be people from your camp. It's just not. I'm just saying. But nonetheless, what he says, slavery was abolished by the hands of Christians, and you guys are acting as if they shouldn't have legislated God's law against it. My goodness. What's crazy is Joel Webbon says we don't have to apologize for slavery in the Bible. Now,
yeah, that's right.
It depends what he means by that. Because but like these guys, they follow Doug Wilson in a lot of ways. And Doug Wilson really has a book called Slavery as It Was. And I reviewed that book on this channel. And he basically says,
Daddy Doug.
Yeah, Daddy Doug. Race relations were great during slavery. They're better than they have ever been.
Oh my goodness.
That's what the book says. And a lot
I'm sure they were great for particular people.
Basically, they say, well, you know, the problem with Southern slavery wasn't Southern slavery. It was just like the fact that there was kidnapping involved. But if you think about it, we didn't do the kidnapping in the States, so we're not really at fault. By the way, the Old Testament law says if you're found with a kidnapped soul, you get the death penalty.
That's right. It does.
Anyways, I'm not going to just...
TV.
The racist crap is garbage, but theonomists want God's law. But here, Roll Them Bones, here's the thing you're missing. If you have theonomists who are in charge, which we don't really think is going to happen, but if they're spewing this stuff, but their bigotry is right there as part of it, that means they're going to enact laws like that, like Bob Jones University, which for the longest time said no miscegenation, no interethnic marriage. You know, these are some real issues. Marlon, you want to comment before we play this next clip?
And that goes back to what I just said. We can thrive and desire God's law to be in place, but the problem is will God's law be applied correctly? Will it be done correctly? Will the sinfulness of man's heart overlap what God desires? That's the problem. It's not that I think most of us would love to see God's law. Like, God's law is good, but man gets in the way. So it's not simply us not wanting God's law. It's just man is not going to apply right, especially if they have the ideology of what we're hearing, what we're listening to today. It just simply it's not going to be applied correctly.
Yeah, you know, if one set of theonomists got in charge in some place, they'd be throwing other theonomists in jail.
Exactly.
Right, exactly.
You're not theonomist enough.
Someone says they're Matt Dillahunty in the channel, but I seriously doubt it's the Matt Dillahunty from what I can tell. But shout out to whoever that is, although not really, because we're not a big fan of impersonators. Leaf of a Vine Eternals makes a pretty good comment, if I understand it properly. Let me read this. Thank you for the super chat. The law was to show Israel their sin and points to Christ. Notice how these Christians are more caught up in establishing theocracy rather than leading people to Christ, which is the ultimate way to transform societies.
Exactly.
Amen. That's exactly right. And you know what's so interesting about that? Thank you for the super chat, the support, and that great comment. What's up with these fools being against international missions, Kris?
Yeah, you have a lot of these guys talking about that, the missions that we sent out from America, some of these foreign nations and lands, were unwise, right? Because remember, and why? Remember, keep in track what we've been talking about. Why would that be unwise? Well, let me tell you, it's unwise because if the theology is preserving your race, and you put your kind, your kin, your family in a dangerous, hostile solution, you're doing one of the most anti preservation things for your race, for your family, for your fifth commandment that there is. And so they push back on a lot of foreign missions.
Crazy,
missiology,
And then what else? When they see people who are engaged in idolatry by their dress, Hindus, he talks a lot about. It is an idolatrous religion, but instead of realizing, hey man, I need to share the gospel with these folks at the park, at the swimming pool, this dude just whines about the lack of white families. What did he say? What was he talking about?
He was upset that he had a lot of Middle Easterns in his local Costco, which I would say this, that you don't know. So we have a Middle Eastern family in our church, and they will dress in their garb, especially the woman. So you don't know what she believes just by the dress, because a lot come over here, and even though they're Christian, they still dress the same, right? It's honoring their culture and customs. So that kind of even shows some ignorance on that level. But if you really felt that they were such idolaters, like you said, you would have shared the gospel of Christ with them. Where is your love for your neighbor? Or do you just want to crush her by the eggshells, and by the milk? Just want to see her crushed.
Yeah. Let me show you this comment by KL. And KL, I think I've seen you around, so I ain't trying to bang on you, but this is a whack comment. Just preach the gospel is what the Christians were saying in Germany. This is what's so crazy. For years, we've been saying to people that are going too far over into what's been called the woke left, saying, yo, and they make fun of us. Oh, you're saying just preach the gospel. Now we're not even really saying just preach the gospel, but we're saying first preach the gospel, at least on me. It's not just, but it is first, and it is keep on, and it is primary, and it can't be supplanted by anything else, but then it gets supplemented by other things, no doubt about that. But what's crazy is Neil Shimby is right. There's a woke right now, and they're saying the same things as the so-called woke left was saying and still says.
Absolutely.
This is...
I don't know if you saw the comment from Thomas Bobby G. He says, but I do not understand what is wrong with separating the races.
This is... Hey, well, let's just go through a couple verses, you guys. Well, in Colossians, Paul says here, there is neither... And then he lists a number of groups. He talks about Scythians, barbarians. These are people who are not cultured, who would definitely be looked at as inferior, not just by Jews, but by regular old Gentiles, because they're barbarians. Do you understand? And he says, but here, that ain't the case. Then he talks about the sin of partiality. Then the scripture talks about the sin of partiality in James. Now, these guys try to limit it and make it just about economics. Certainly what James is talking about would not just apply to economics, the sin of partiality. It's not just about economics. Certainly it's about social class, but it's not just about social class. And don't act like those things don't get blended together. And in fact, great example with all these southern churches who are supposedly the greatest evangelists to black folks the world's ever seen, according to some people in the chat. They said, you sit over here. You don't get to sit there. And that's why a lot of the black denominations came into existence, like the AME Zion, because you said, don't sit here. You can't be at the altar. Go upstairs. All this kind of stuff. And then in the early church, there was a problem with the food distribution. One group of people was getting favoritism because of who they were, and another was not getting as much, and they had to deal with it. and make sure it was fair and just and done right. That's what happens with those deacons and then Hellenized Jews. It had to do with cultural issues there, though. Some group was seen as better because they were being showed favoritism. So all this is against the Bible ethic. And in fact, Paul called Peter out for stop just eating with Gentiles when the folks from Jerusalem came. He said because conduct was out of line with the gospel. Remember that? He said, oh, now you're not going to eat with them? That's out of step, man. What's wrong with separating the races, so-called? Are they going to be separated in heaven when every nation, tribe, and tongue is singing to the Lamb? Do you guys really believe there's going to be a black section of heaven? And if there is, these fools apparently never want to go over there. So bigoted. What else do you want to? I mean, I can't believe you'd say what's wrong with separating the races. You know, that's a curse of sin. People don't realize, yes, we're judged in Genesis 3 as humanity, but we were judged in Genesis 11 because humanity was not going out into all the world the way the Lord had told Adam. And they were doing things like building monuments to their own pride and achievement instead of bringing about God's glory upon this land and being co-regents with him. So God judged them by confusing the languages. They were no longer monolingual, and that's how you get people going everywhere. And that's where the so-called races, which we agree isn't a biblical word, but it's funny when you guys talk about racism against white guys, you seem to know what racism is all of a sudden.
Exactly.
Right.
You guys want to add something to my little spiel there?
No, man. I mean, I think that's solid. You know, the fact that you have to ask that question kind of shows the problem. You know, It's like someone saying, what's wrong with stealing from my neighbor? You know, it's like you. That's what's wrong with it. You know, it's like the answer is in your question. You know, so.
Not only that.
Galatians chapter.
Go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
Galatians chapter 3, verse 28. I mean, there is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither slave nor free, there is no male or female, for we are all one in Christ. I mean, this idea that we separate races, it's a foolish still.
They almost laugh at that verse. Have you noticed that? They laugh at it.
I'm gonna give you the rebuttal that vocab. You're used to this from dealing with black Hebrews. Like, so are you saying people disappear? Yeah. Right? They just stop being the group that, you know, black people stop being black, white people. So is that what you're saying? It's like, it's comedy because I'm like, I heard that before with another group that actually displays bigotry and partiality, you know?
Okay, before we play these next clips, let me look at Nitty here. Nitty says, atheist here, well, welcome to the program. Thank you very much for joining us. If it's a big problem, what's the likelihood you'd address this with examined? Do you guys know who examined is?
I think so.
I think it's Frank Turek. I think not Frank Turek, but
cross-examined. Yeah. Oh, you mean cross-examined? Oh, I see it. Examined.
Yeah, cross-examined.
So he means cross-examined. Okay, I understand now. Good call.
Yeah, Frank Turek.
Ask Turek to have you on too to denounce Christian nationalism instead of Childerson Stuckey cuddling up with it. I don't really know much about what he's talking about. I want to share the comment. I don't know that they are, so I can't comment on that. And here's the other thing. There's certain definitions of Christian nationalism I'd be okay with. I would say, well, that's just being a Christian in America. No problem.
Right. Yeah.
But there's other definitions where you start, and this is what we're mainly talking about, the bigotry element. But go ahead.
Yeah, we're talking about a certain kind of Christian nationalism. We're not saying all Christian nationalism prescribes to what we're talking about. Right. I thought we said that in the outset of the show, but we'll repeat it again.
That lends to the difficult nature of like defining Christian nationalism.
Yeah.
You know, with all these different definitions. So because you have one definition doesn't mean it stands for the rest of them, if that makes sense.
All right, we have one more clip before we play the sermon. I think this is probably Chris's favorite clip. The doctor clip.
When we moved to Texas, I needed to get a new cardiologist. And so my wife, you know, she does a lot of this for me because before we had kids, she was an RN. And she knows a lot more than I do. I let her read those books. She read some medical books. Not. Yeah. And so she's doing the research and looking at these things. And she shows me two doctors, both of this within the same practice, same company, hospital. And saying, you know, do you like one over the other? And one was a young white dude and one was a young black dude. And I said, I prefer the young white dude. And this is why. The reason why is not because I'm white. because we currently live in a historical moment in the West, and particularly in these United States, where I know that both of these guys could be perfectly qualified. But I also know that if there's a chance that one of them was not qualified and was given a free pass, it'd be the black guy. I know that young white guy, there's no way he got a free pass.
Marlon, he knows how easy black folks have it in America. He knows how easy they got it. So, and by the way, I think that dude he's with is that 1689er guy. I think that from the tweet.
Yeah. Yes.
Is that the same guy?
So we're not associated, when we're reading that tweet, we're not associating Joel with people we ain't associated with, you know?
Yeah, he's associated with the guy, man. He does a show with him. I mean, they're talking about this conversation. I mean, this is dumb. This is a dumb statement, man. And what kills me is that he says it with so much confidence. Like he's so confident. And when he says it, and you know, I would love for some pushback on that kind of dogma, man. It's like, bro, like how so you're looking at someone's race, you're looking at someone's color, ethnicity, if you will, and you're making a judgment saying, oh yeah, he had to have it easy. He had to have it easy. What? That's such a foolish statement. It's a dumb statement. And
matter of fact,
just insulting.
He goes further. He says, "There's no way the white man didn't work hard for it."
Right? Ain't no way. There's no way. It's crazy stuff, bro. It's crazy.
This fool acts like he's never heard of trust fund babies, and he doesn't know about Skull and Bones and how people get into Yale and Harvard and how nepotism and how certain crimes get erased because daddy is a politician and all this stuff. He acts like that doesn't actually exist. Like that's not what's the Good Old Boys Club is not real, and the lodges and all this, and black folks are just waltzing through Disney America, having it easy. Man, somebody hey Kris, somebody should have told that to Ben, you know, Dr. Ben.
Yeah, Ben Carson, you know,
he
just passed up on
Ben Carson, man.
He passed up on Ben Carson and got a trans doctor over there cutting up kids, right? Because he went with the white guy, right? I mean,
right? Because he went with the white guy,
right? Let me address this like seriously, because this one is actually one of the one that gets me pretty upset the most, right? Because what's the problem with this? Let's first address the DEI topic, right? DEI is terrible. Does it happen? Mm-hmm. Yes. It is terrible, but let's not act like only black people benefited from it, because you got white females too that benefit from DEI. So let's be real. Mm-hmm. His analogy operates on a collective mindset. What is collectivism? You treat the individual on the basis of a whole. So guess what? The same thing could be done to Joel Webbon. He doesn't realize this. If you start looking on stats about who commits the most crimes or well, guess what? You have a lot of white people who commit fraud and financial crimes more than any other race by a large discrepancy. So according to Joel Webbon, I should go in a bank and say, get that white guy out of there. Give me the black guy, because I just know he's going to deal with my money, right? Not white guy. You see the problem? The problem is when you treat people like this, it actually, let me quote Joel, when you look at people's skin color, emphasize that, it inevitably leads to racism, right? When you focus on race, it inevitably leads to racism. And so the problem is, again, it's the collectivist ideology that Joel has arbitrarily created in his own mind. There's a lot more that could be said.
Share some stats for that, you know, Joe. Like, and you know these guys. You know, I like the word bigotry to use against these guys. This is from the what are called the information panels on Google, and they usually take like sort of a aggregation of different definitions. So we can look at other definitions and other dictionaries. It's fine, but sometimes the information panels are helpful. Look at this one. What it says: obstinate or unreasonable attachment to a belief, opinion, or faction. In particular, prejudice against a person or people, here's the key, on the basis of their membership of a particular group. So these guys are literally bigots, where they're judging people based upon their membership in a group. And
by definition.
By definition, they're bigots.
By definition, they're bigots. Absolutely.
That's why, If you call them racist, they'll slide out of it. Although they can clearly identify racism against white people.
Right.
You know, when it's convenient, then they know racism all of a sudden. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But they are bigots. I've heard them go on things about why, you know, it's good to be prejudiced. You know?
Yeah, I heard that.
But they just try to break down the word, and they obfuscate. I always mess up with that. The issue.
Obfuscate, yeah. Everybody does prejudice. Everybody discriminates, of course, but it's contextualized, not on the basis of ethnicity. That's sinful. That's wrong. That's partiality. As you said, that's bigotry. You know,
what's and boy name?
You're trying, and what's actually more kind of like sad is they're trying to look into stats to justify their bigotry. Like he's looking at DEI stats to determine why he chose a white doctor. He chose a white doctor before all that. Let's be real. And now he's trying to go into stats to be like, well, yeah, this supports my own theory about us hard-working white men. You know, the black person, he just got the job because he just got a pass, right? It's like, how you know that by looking at him?
And it's like, bro, why is this on your podcast, dude?
Yeah,
like, something you don't need to say out. Something you don't need to say out loud.
Like, imagine podcasting and talking about this like you're doing ministry.
Imagine being a black doctor in his church.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, right,
bro.
Crazy. Like, I mean that goes to show you only can hold what's in your heart, man, for too long before it starts coming out, man. You know what I mean? It's gonna start spilling out.
If there's a black doctor at Joel's church, please contact us. We want to hear about how easy it was for you DEI hire.
Yeah, we'll do an interview.
He's gonna be like, "Yeah, I didn't study at all, and I just waltzed right through them."
They just gave me the robe, you know.
They said you deserve an F, but since you're,
People out EEW's comment. He says, "Is this channel liberal Christians?"
See, every time. The funny, these dudes don't understand how there's a lot we could talk about where we would find so much common cause. We're not closeted liberals or none of that. We're not ashamed of at least I'm not ashamed to be a Christian. I'm not ashamed of who I am, of who God. Like, this is a way to not deal with argumentation and criticism of your position. You know?
Yeah. And what's unfortunate, you know, is because when I started to speak out on this, I got the same treatment. Kdub now went woke. He's embracing critical race theory. He's Jamar Tisby 2.0. You know, I heard all this nonsense. My theology hasn't changed. Matter of fact, I'm the one who's saying the same. You guys are changing and embracing some godless ideology.
My goodness.
But what do I know? I'm just a rapper.
But we need to call this out. We can't be like Muslims who, a lot of times, like, especially in the West, they won't really criticize other Muslims in public, no matter how whack what they do is a lot of times. We can't be like that. We don't go around showing no charity and just criticizing everybody, but especially stuff this insidious, this nasty, this potentially divisive, this bigoted. We got to say something. That's why the more I'm learning about it, I'm like, yo, I got to jump on this. And the way they've mistreated Kdub just shows the character, especially of the followers. And it's a problem. Now, listen to this sermon. So these are all from a podcast. You guys ready to switch? This is the final segment of the show. Switch over to this sermon. This is a longer clip, so you guys tell me when you want me to stop. This fool eisegetes Lord of the Rings, first of all. And then second of all, he makes an argument, Marlon, that there is nobility in the blood. And the sermon is supposed to be about Jesus being born in Matthew chapter 2. And when he gets to the part where the angel addresses Joseph, takes this weird, strange detour into what I'm about to play.
So, Vocab, what you're saying is it's supposed to be about the genealogy of Christ, but it ends up being about the genealogy of the white kin.
Basically. Now, this is the part where the angel addresses Joseph.
I've seen this sermon, though. Yeah, so I know what you're talking about.
So check this out, y'all. And man, these fools love them some LOTR.
Virtually every single generation of people that precedes this postmodern, effeminate generation we have now, every prior generation, they thought very differently than we think today. And one particular aspect of their distinct thinking from ours is that they actually thought that lineage
and blood mattered. That it mattered. They actually thought, it was common knowledge. This is how people used to think. They would think, this person is the son of so-and-so, son of so-and-so, son of so-and-so, the heir of a long legacy, a long lineage, and therefore he has noble blood. And what does that mean? It means that there is strength within him. We today, as moderns, modern Westerners, we really think that it doesn't matter. That there's nothing to be said for heritage and lineage and blood. And really, a lot of what we have going on today, there are a few people, this isn't original to me, a few people have provided this insight, have noticed part of what's going on in a political and cultural sense in America and the West really just in general. Part of what's going on is that we are ruled now by theater kids. And I don't know if you've noticed, but that hasn't been working out very well. It's not a good thing. The kids that should have been shoved harder into lockers when they were growing up.
That's where I got to pause right there.
Yeah.
Hey, what's funny about this? There's so much funny here. First of all, he complains about us being ruled by theater kids. Now, there's
the irony.
There's an extent where I even can kind of say, okay, I know what you're trying to say. Like liberal arts, like creative versus like pragmatic. Okay. But then he goes on for, first of all, sing a Disney song. He knows the words to it at the end of this clip. Now you could say he's making fun of it, but the brother knows it. And then he also quotes Lord of the Rings extensively. Now I understand it's a book, right? We understand we're not referring to a movie. It's a book. But it's like, bro, what's going on there, first of all? But for him to make some kind of joke, I guess it's supposed to be a joke, the kids who should have been pushed a little harder into lockers is the.
Yeah.
What do you think, Marlon?
Just I mean, when I hear that, when I hear him, man, it's just mind numbing, man. It's just, I mean, it's disappointing, man. I mean, it's an abuse of the text. He's pushing his ideologies into the text. It's just all over the place, man.
You see, this is a sermon, everyone. I'm going to move you, Marlon. Yeah. I'm going to move us all around. I know this is kind of weird to do, but look at this. Look what this is. He will save his people from their sins. Part 2, right. Matthew 1:18-25. That's the text that Sunday morning. This is a recent sermon.
Yeah.
And there's
no way that fits in. The rant he's going on, it has nothing to do with the text whatsoever. Nothing to do with the text whatsoever.
Yo, watch, it's going to get weirder. Keep in mind everything you've heard so far, everyone.
Now, ruling us. And you might think, wait a second, that does not sound like something the pastor should say. Like, is he about to make an argument for physiogamy? A little bit. A little bit.
At least he's admitting it.
Comments? If you guys don't know, to the chat, physiogamy is the idea that the way someone looks,
yes,
or where they're from, their origin, and oftentimes could have to do with their ethnicity, directly relates to it tells you something about their character. How would you define it?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's why I'm looking up the definition right now. The judgment of a character by facial features or expression. So it's obviously having some kind of ethnic kind of, obviously different groups have different facial features. So, you want to laugh at the black guy with the big nose. He's like, yeah, a little bit. I was like, I want to make fun of people for how they look because of their ethnicity.
But he's saying that it denotes your character and traits. Because he's talking about nobility of the blood here, which again, these guys say they're like American, but like I thought we were trying to get away from that. I mean, like the idea of, blood-based rights and all this kind of stuff. I thought usually you hear conservatives talk about meritocracy, which seems that they would affirm when they're complaining about DEI hires, but at the same time, these want people. They literally want it to be recognized again that you might be better because of who your dad is?
Yeah, it's the Mott and Bailey you get a lot with these guys. You know, when you get them on one hill, they just move over and they argue. No, I'm not saying that, and then they argue that. And then, you know what I'm saying? So that's the difficult aspect of that. You know.
You know, if this was true, why did they say, "Isn't this the carpenter's son? Isn't this Joseph's son?" They weren't like, "Yo, look at Jesus.
Right.
I mean, he's of noble lineage. No wonder he's breaking down the scriptures like this in Nazareth." They were like, "Yo, isn't he like the carpenter's son?"
Right. Downplayed it all together.
Yeah, and remember, this is the part where they're talking about Joseph's lineage here. Now, David had a lot of offspring, people, especially by the time you get to the first century and in that time, and right, he would have had a lot of offspring. I'm just saying, it's not like every single one was going to be in rulership or something. They gave the sacrifice. The sacrifice they gave was what, turtle doves? That's a poor person's offering.
Yeah, exactly.
Play this.
Like, there's actually something to be said for innate courage. Innate courage that comes through long lineages of generation after generation after generation of courageous people.
A lot of the kings who sat on the throne of Judah were David's sons there, Joel. How did they do just because they were descendants of David, Joel? A couple of them did all right, but not most of them, Joel. What is he even talking about? Weren't the Levites sons of Aaron?
Yep.
Descendants of, I mean, what is he? I mean, this is why King George was in charge during the Revolutionary War, right? And you know what's funny? A lot of these arguments, you know what they end up in? And a lot of times, incest and problems because of close interbreeding. That's what happens with these royal families a lot of times, because they actually buy this stuff so you can only marry. Next thing you know, kid gets a paper cut, he dies. You know what I'm saying? This is real stuff. What happens specifically? I'm talking about Russia there with the sons of the Tsar Nicholas. But it's like, this is wild to me.
That you actually can't just take anyone and make them king.
Hey,
It's too
did
wild,
David's
man.
own dad
Sorry,
think
Jesus.
he was about to be the king?
Nope.
You know what's funny? Micah 5:2, when it talks about the shepherd king coming from Bethlehem, Ephrath, it literally describes it as in the most humble terms possible. Guys, read through Micah 5, the description of the shepherd king and Jesus, even though it talks about, it doesn't say the name Jesus, but it's been understood and it's right that that's a messianic passage. It describes humble, lowly origins. You have the stable. I mean, do we need to reiterate this? This is almost like a weird version of like health and wealth, prosperity gospel based upon ethnicity or something.
Hey, you want to know something funny? Joel has argued we've overreacted to the prosperity gospel.
What? Really? Wow.
Just a little nugget.
Wow.
He's not as now. Again, let me be fair. He says it's wrong, but he says we've overreacted. It's not as bad as kind of what we've kind of made it.
I could see that because these fools be talking about business and all that like it's the second commandment.
That's right. You're right.
The Bible, okay? So if you're like, well, I don't know if quoting Lord of the Rings is sufficient. Okay, that's it. Honestly, it should be. It should be. But the Bible.
I just got to rewind that. Now, I know he's partially joking, right? But then again, are you?
Is he?
Oh, if quoting Lord of the Rings is sufficient. Okay, that's it. Honestly, it should be. It should.
Hey, guys, this is a Bible teaching church right here, right?
Yeah.
This is a Sunday morning, people. This isn't a random like men's meeting or something. You know what I'm saying? Like,
this ain't a podcast.
Imagine inviting a friend, especially a friend of the dark persuasion, to your Joel Webbon church this Sunday morning. And then you go, was your pastor talking about nobility of the blood?
Yeah, he was. I'm sorry, brother.
Could you not take this section and put it upon the lips of an Aryan? With a Y,
man.
not with an I, with a Y.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Them dudes in American History X would be like, yeah.
Yep. Rock on. Go, Joel. Preach it, Joel.
This is bizarre, man. Is
It gets
it about to
better.
make an argument from physiology? Yes.
That's
now-
so strange.
I'm going to eisegete Lord of the Rings. Don't worry, I'll get to the Bible eventually.
We can't just take anyone and make them king. The Bible, okay? So if you're like, well, I don't know if quoting Lord of the Rings is sufficient. Okay, that's it. Honestly, it should be. It should be. But the Bible, of course, is superior to the Lord of the Rings. But the Lord of the Rings is great. The Bible tells us that it's actually painful for the populace. It is an incredibly negative thing. It's a judgment from the Lord. It decimates whole societies and whole nations when what happens? When a pauper becomes king. That's actually not a positive thing, right? Disney's hardest hit. You know, like, well, I thought that was a good thing because those in power and those from a long lineage of power and authority, those are the bad guys, you know. But whenever, you know, a street rat, riff-raff, da-da-da-da, right? Aladdin, you know, a pauper, a peasant, he becomes king. And what does that mean? It means justice will flow through the land and he'll be kind. No, that's not what the Bible teaches.
I got to get some
Where
comments
does the
on this,
Bible?
guys.
Well, where does the Bible teach this? You says it's not what the Bible teaches. Where does the Bible teach what you're saying? Because we're not hearing anything. I mean, the sermon started off about Matthew 1, but I'm all we're hearing is Lord of the Ring quotes, you know, and so
now,
yeah.
you know,
I'm just saying, nothing ideologies, man.
5-minute sermon.
That's all he's talking about.
So he does deal parts with the text. It's not like the whole thing is as bad, you know. But let me show you guys real quick where he is getting part of that from here, because it's funny that he doesn't even give the reference there. It's like, did you not think about this? It's from the book of Proverbs. It's from the book of Proverbs. It's Proverbs chapter 30, verse 22. That's what he's referring to, and he's kind of making a big like claim from that within his argument. And imagine tying this in. You know what I'm saying? Oh, wow. Oh, look at this. Everyone's looking horrible right now. Y'all going to be clipped by Joel's side. I'm just watching a wreck, I guess.
Okay.
Gosh, man.
Imagine hearing a sermon about Lord of the Rings and blaming us for it.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
you guys are a wreck. It's like, okay. He's the guy that's laying you down like 50 points and
Here
you're
we
making
go.
fun of the team winning.
A servant who becomes king, a godless fool who gets plenty to eat. So that's the verse he's referring to. Here's the larger context. Under 3 things the earth trembles. Under 4 it cannot bear up. A servant who becomes king, a godless fool who gets plenty to eat, a contemptible woman who gets married, and a servant who displaces her mistress. So the point there is that this person is a fool, so they don't possess the wisdom to manage their new social position. That's the whole point. They don't possess the wisdom to manage their system. But you know, it's funny they're using this because think about how Pilate, for example, would look at Jesus. That's why he thought it was hilarious that he was king of the Jews. It's like, what?
Are you serious? Are you serious?
This guy's your king, you know?
Yeah, I just thought of what was the Hebrew like? Dim's my papas. Like that's what Joel said about Herod.
Shout out to Larry Love for the super chat. Thank you, brother. All right, here we go. The Joel Webbon sermon.
A peasant becomes a king and everybody's actually in trouble because he's a fool. And because he doesn't come from a long lineage of tutors and fathers who have shaped him and forged him and trained him in virtue. What Aragorn is saying in this little moment between Boromir,
So if you guys don't know, so he went from Proverbs 30:22 without actually quoting it. So he just kind of references that as somehow evidence that just like the angel addressed Joseph for who he was, because remember this, what's the whole point of this? It's not about any of this stuff he's talking about. It's because the Messiah has to come from the line of David. And what happened there? You have a situation where, think about who Jesse's grandpa was and his grandma. I believe that's the relationship there. It's Boaz and Ruth. So he has a grandma who's a foreigner. So sorry, guys, there was intermarriage. Now they look at Ruth as the best one that's supposed to be, meaning your people, my people. They're saying Clarence Thomas did that kind of thing. That's their whole argument there. But you know, you look at this and you're way over here, and now after alluding to Proverbs 30:22 as if it supports this position about nobility and the blood and all this stuff. Then he goes back to, because before this clip, it was a bunch of Lord of the Rings stuff. I just didn't include it all in there. So he's returning to the Lord of the Rings to make the point. And I don't even really think this is what Tolkien was saying, but this is bizarre. Check this out.
Boromir doesn't like Aragorn because Boromir is the son of the steward of Gondor. But the steward is merely that. He is a steward. He's just a placeholder for what? For the one true king. And Aragorn has been a ranger in the shadows, doing his own private thing, finding himself. He hasn't been acting particularly kingly. But he does have within his veins royal blood. Aragorn is the rightful king. And notice what he says here to Boromir as Boromir is dying. One, he aligns with him. He doesn't say it's me versus you. No, he says our people. And that's the first thing when Boromir responds that he picks up on. And he says this, it's a positive thing. He says this while smiling as he's trying to stifle the pain, taking his last final breath. But it's a positive thing to Boromir. He's like, our people. Our people. He's grateful for that sentiment. That it's not Aragorn. Aragorn in that moment could say, your father has been a traitor to the realm. Your father is a joke. But instead, no, he uses it as an opportunity to unite with Boromir and with this lousy steward of Gondor and to say, no, but in the macro level, at the big level, it's our people. But notice what else he says. He says, I do not know what strength is in my blood. And we read that and we just think that it's fictitious. We think that it's fairy tales. We think that this is just myth and legend. But this is how people thought. This is how, and I'm not talking about primitive people who are dumb. No, I'm talking, this is how the West thought. This is how the Christian West thought. All the way up until incredibly recently.
Now, I got a verse. There's a minute and a half of the sermon left, but I do have a verse I want to show. You guys want to make a comment on any of that before I show this verse that I think is important?
Yeah. I just think it's weird to substantiate how Christians have thought about this issue. He quotes Lord of the Rings to substantiate that point, which is
so
such a
weird.
It's such a weird thing to like substantiate your point on. This is how Christians have always thought. Lord of the Rings. I mean, like,
yeah, it's very weird.
Yeah, it's just strange.
All right, let me see if I can play this or show this. Do you guys see Proverbs 17:2 on my screen?
I do
okay,
not,
you guys might not be able to hear me. Let me just show this here.
Honestly.
To the live chat, look at Proverbs 17:2. I'm going to make it a little bigger here, if I can here. Oh, it's showing the ads. Do you guys see what Proverbs 17:2 says? It's on the screen right there. A slave who acts insightfully will rule over a son who acts shamefully and will share in the inheritance among brothers. Proverbs 17:2 in the same book. Now let me go back to the brothers. I want to have them look at this together with me. I know you guys for some reason can't hear me sometimes when I switch screens. But Kdub, can you bring up Proverbs 17:2 in your Bible? And then Marlon, can you look at Proverbs 17:2? I want to show everyone this because it just
I have it. We
understand what Proverbs is. Okay, what I read from the Legacy Standard. What do you got, Marlon? Can you read from what you got?
Yeah, I can read from the ESV real quick.
Yeah, if you can't, go ahead.
Let me pull it real quick. The ESV says, a servant who deals wisely will rule over a son who acts shamefully and will share the inheritance as one of the brothers.
You guys see what that says?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not about the person's class or bloodline, Joel. In the same book, which is wisdom literature, which are general observations, there you have a slave or a servant who is foolish, and so they're not equipped to rule the reign. That's what he gave out of 30:22. But in the same book, it talks about the slave or servant who deals wisely. It's not about the bloodline. It's about how they act. Notice they're going to displace the son, Joel. So your whole bloodline argument is destroyed because in Proverbs 17:2 it says he's going to share the inheritance with the son. The slave is because of his character and merit, not because of his bloodline, because of how he dealt wisely. Guys, do you think that's a good verse to show Joel's getting his interpretation wrong?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I do. I mean, obviously Proverbs is wisdom literature, but nonetheless, I think there's a historical backing that says that back then servants were pretty much family, considered family. The servant was within the family fold, so it definitely sets the standard of like, no, because of your lineage, because of your blood, that doesn't matter. It's about your behavior. It's about how you act, and if that is in line, then yeah.
NIV says a prudent servant will rule over a disgraceful son and will share the inheritance as one of the family, to your point. So this shows how wisdom and industriousness can elevate a person's social economic status, and that doesn't have to do with their bloodline, bruh. Now I'm gonna play one last clip. I know Marlon, you got to dip out. We're gonna play this last clip, and then we'll let you dip out right before if you want to right now. Tell people about your channel and debates you got coming up real quick before you dip out.
Oh yeah. The Gospel Truth. I think the next debate. I can't remember the next debate. So many of them, but the next debate will be on next week, the 3rd, and I think it'll be JD and CJ Cox will be debating. Does God decree all things? So that should be a fun debate. But overall, the Gospel Truth is a ministry designed to encourage interaction with those we disagree with and preach the gospel through apologetics. Through debate. And so that's the overarching goal of the Gospel Truth ministry as a whole.
Now I want to see you set up a debate with Neil Shinvey against maybe like your boy Stephen Wolf or something on Christian nationalism.
That'd be dope. That would be dope. That would definitely be dope, man.
All right, Marlon, thanks for joining us. We only got one more clip we're going to go through, and thank you very much. Okay, so here's the last little bit of this sermon.
Virtually every single generation picks up on
to the end here. This is the last little part, Kris, and then we're done.
All the way up until incredibly recently, who are dumb. No, I'm talking, this is how the West thought. This is how the Christian West thought. All the way up until incredibly recently, people thought like this. They thought that there was something to nobility. There was something to lineage. There was something to heritage. There was something to blood. And so too the angel of the Lord, when he appeals to Joseph, he first puts Joseph into his right frame of mind. Before bestowing upon Joseph high honors, he first reminds Joseph of his high nobility. Joseph, thou son of David, in whose blood pulses a nobility from the king. You are in the lineage of the prophecies. You are of a noble birth, and it is fitting and right that the Messiah, as it has been foretold and prophesied for ages, that he would come through your line. Sometimes when God was...
So Kdub, he did all that to get there. But even when he applies it to Joseph, he ain't really getting it right. Joseph, there's a lot of descendants of David. Joseph would be one of many. The point has to do with who they are as well. But this dude makes it about something else. Now, it is true it's about the prophecies, but it's weird how he relays that to something that I don't think is really belongs, But I want to have people remember Proverbs 17:2, and I want to have them notice this is from a sermon. He will save his people from their sins. Well, Mr. Kdub, I appreciate you drawing my attention to this situation and that we could cover it today. And I don't know if you have some final words you want to say.
Yeah, like all beginnings, I don't think we're at the end of this, unfortunately. I think there's going to be some more discovery on some of the ideology that's coming out. I'm definitely looking forward to Rick as he comes on Saturday, I believe, to address this in a more thorough manner, and really just to highlight even further, substantial quotes, substantial citations of some of the bigotry that's coming out of this particular branch of Christian nationalism.
And Kdub, I want to remind you in the audience, that whole part we heard, which is 7 minutes we pretty much listened to, is because the angel in Matthew 1:20 said, Joseph, son of David. That's where he got that from. And I didn't even play the full Lord of the Rings part.
It's kind of like when Roman Catholics, they hear one positive thing about Mary, they come up with the whole doctrine that they squeeze and insert in there. It's kind of like the Christian nationalist version,
Yep. John 1 says something very fascinating. Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God, children born not of natural descent, nor of human decision or a husband's will, but born of God. And it's funny because if you listen to the next part of the sermon, he does get into the Christian new birth and applies that in a weird way, but he's mixing categories if you go through it, because earlier he's talking about something different, but then when he ends up at the end of the clip, he does talk about the Christian new birth. It's like, well, hold on, wait a minute, bro. You're mixing the categories there. But guys, what does 1 Corinthians 1 say? I just think it's so important. We're probably going to say this till we get blue in the face. It's so important what it says. Chapter 1, verse 26, and this is how we're going to close. Brothers and sisters, think of what you were when you were called. Not many of you were wise by human standards. Not many were influential. Not many were of noble birth. But God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. God chose the lowly things of this world and to despise things, the things that are not, to nullify the things that are, so that no one may boast before him. And he goes on. Come on now.
Yeah, man.
Well,
and
shout out to the live chat. And shout out to you, Kris, for good work. Sorry, I interrupted you. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. That's the weird thing. A lot of these guys are claiming to be Reformed, where I see a lot of this is actually antithetical to Reformed theology, And so, yeah.
100%. It's like you're relying on man's wisdom. You're relying on man's strength. What's going on, man?
Yeah, the nobility.
Nobility in the blood. There is power, wonder working power in the blood.
Literally in the blood. And this is why they wouldn't be too pro adoption, right? Because there's no nobility in that bloodline, right? It's not from your stock, right?
Yeah, didn't one of them say adoption was sinful or something like that?
Not wise. Now I spoke to him and he kind of gave an answer, and I was like, man, you should have just said that. You know what I mean? Like, that answer is way better than what you meant to say versus what you said. He's like, yeah, I know. I was like, all right, well, I'll accept it, but it's all
these
right.
fools don't like adoption. They don't like Christian missions. They don't like multicultural churches. What do they like? I know what they like. White boy summer.
That's WES, WASP. They like all white distinctive. And let me just say this: I have no problem with someone being proud of where they're from, their heritage and culture. But the issue is they're going way beyond that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, if you want to sport a mullet, drink Mountain Dew, and BMX from a ramp over firecrackers in the street or something, white boy summer. It's all good. But it's like they're taking it to a whole nother level. Well, let's play this song you got, Kris, one more time. You did a great job on this song, by the way. That's called Shut Up and Rap. Available on all platforms. Stream it now. Thank you, Kdub, for joining. God bless. Peace out. Shalom. I'll talk to you on the phone, Kdub, because the song's going to go and I won't be able to hear you when it's playing. You know what I'm saying? All right, peace.
People were upset with him. Kdub, Kris, he's African-American, Christian, Reformed, Baptist, who I believe also is like a Christian rapper. And I've engaged with him.
He was a master's, right?
Online.
I think.
I don't know. Okay, I don't know. I know he's definitely friendly to the John MacArthur camp, and say, you know what, Aristotle was essentially, for all intents and purposes, he was right. And anybody who's retweeting him and echoing his sentiments and saying, yeah, I think Aristotle was right. If you're going to respond by saying that's racist, then you're just that's great, but just put out another rap album. Yeah, but don't speak to politics because you're not. It ain't for you. Yep.
Hey, Kdub, stick to the rap. Wasn't saying that, now was calling out the blacks. Hebrew Israelites, woke Senate Democrats. Yeah, but I guess they don't remember that. A lot of guys talking tough on the net. Spiders in the webs got them upset. Kdub, stay in your lane, that's a bet. Preaching Jesus, homie, and I say it with my chest. Yes, why Christians quoting William Faye? You have a problem if I was quoting him, okay? It wasn't Aristotle, y'all should actually read the sources. Instead of white knights who think they ride on their horses. Too many guys talk about the fiction. Mermaids, aliens, superstitions. I'd rather be talking about the crucifixion. Ain't tired of saying that Jesus risen, yes. And my marriage mixed, now they throwing fits. Relatively sinful, yo, whose man is this? Terrible doctrine that come from the abyss. Man, I'm speaking facts, this ain't even a diss. I see who they are, cause they shown us. Bunch of children pretending to be grown ups. Multi-ethnic, bruh, they oppose us. And my wife, you laughing like, bruh, so what? Yeah, whoever let these guys in anyway? Immature boys just gon' call you gay. Real men ain't gotta prove it on X all day. Bro, that sound gay. A Christian nation, oh, they think they kings. Getting their theology from Lord of the Rings. I'm sick of the division all of this brings. This is just a woke pendulum swing. White boy summer, oh, I know the code. This ain't a new thing, so it's time to expose. Didn't we see the same thing from the woke? I said it back then that I think it's a joke. A white dude called me N-word on Twitter. Kid gloves on, they just told him delete it. Really weird, they didn't call this man to repentance. Said I'm slandering, oh, I am the menace. It's time to get back. Get back to the scripture. Pastors need to spend less time on a Twitter. Exegete the passage, show the godly man picture. Jesus ain't a means to have your kingdom get bigger. I love my white people, I love black and brown. Y'all my true fam, and I'll say that proud. There's so many that's trying to divide. It's a narrow road, but the gates are hell wide. Yeah. Don't think women should teach theology. They promote Megan, see, I think that's odyssey. No beef with it, just drawing the line. Rather seeing women holding bottles of wine. Red, pink, Confederate, blue eyes. They just want to see more, they kind. Different race, Darwin kind of vibe. In Christ, all tribes have reconciled. Everything's racist, no, I didn't say that. Kenneth clowns and homie, don't play that. If you want to segregate, come out and state that. I'm more than my skin, theologian with a wave cap. Bruh, I go way back, typical lay back. Disrespect, bruh, say that, stay way back. So many contradictions need to explain that. Heaven is a home, what you talk about most says where you place your face at. It's about kin, it ain't about skin. Reclaim nation, make it great again. Then talk about white, it's so confusing. Multi-ethnic causes chaos, no homie, that's sin. Throw 2.0 in the trash bin. Put it to death, yo, in the casket. Unified in the gospel, Ephesians 2, me and my bros, yeah, we stay tapped in. Don't want no pagans, you get out and preach. Share the good news and don't you retreat. Christians put our eyes back on our Christ. Love your neighbor, black, Hispanics, and white. Preach a full counsel, don't go beyond the text. If it ain't scripture, then you reject. Man, I feel better, got this off my chest. Amen, hallelujah, saints be blessed.
What if conservatives as a whole in our nation, what if that might be a ripe harvest? What if that guy who's a little bit of a chemist, a little bit of a racist, a little bit to my right, but what if he's the ripe harvest?
But I'm just a rapper though.